On today's episode of Dance Med Spotlight, we're talking with Terry Hyde. He is a psychotherapist based out of the UK, working with his company, Counseling for Dancers, as well as his charity or nonprofit, Steps. He specializes in working with performing artists, but particularly dancers, especially having come from a dance background himself. In this episode, we talk about, as usual, a lot of different topics, but some of the highlights are things like neurodiversity, how that presents for dancers, ways that they can actually use that as a bit of superpower for themselves. We also talk about training methods, ways that words matter and how we're speaking with dancers that we're working with, as well as perhaps some abusive training methods that we may still see within the community. We talk about so many different topics, and I think from a lot of different perspectives as well. So whether you're a dancer, a dance teacher, a dance parent, studio owner, competition owner, another health or wellness provider within the dance medicine space, we have some really great information for you. So make sure that you stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of Dance Med Spotlight, where we talk about all things dance medicine and dance science. Today, I am excited about my guest, Terry Hyde. Terry Hyde is a psychotherapist out of the UK, specializing in working with dancers. We're going to learn more about that as we go, but welcome, Terry.
Thank you very much. Thank you for asking me on, Alyssa.
The very first question that I always ask folks who join me here is, tell me a little bit about what got you to this point of doing what you do. What was your journey here?
Have we got half an hour?
The short story version.
Short version. Okay. I started ballet at 6 years old. Went on to vocational training with the Royal Academy of Dance, age 10. Age 16, I joined the Royal Ballet School for their 3-year course. And my last year, graduation year in January, the Royal Ballet's artistic director phoned the school and asked them to release me to join the Royal Ballet. I spent a few years there, and then I joined a company as a soloist. The company was called London's Festival Ballet, which is now called English National Ballet. I danced about 3 years, did principal roles, soloist roles, and I wanted to do more. So I then left the company and did a UK tour of West Side Story, and then went on to do West End musicals, film and TV. And had a forced retirement. I was in sales management for about 4 years, and then I set up my own business management organization to look after people in show business, not just dancers.
Mm-hmm.
And during that 15 years and building up the business, some clients after their business meetings with me would offload their personal issues. As you know, when you're doing your physical therapy, people offload, don't they?
Oh, yes.
They do to hairdressers as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Anyway, so I started thinking, what the hell do I do with all this information? Anyway, when I sold the business after 15 years, I took early retirement. And after a few years, I got bored, as you do being a dancer. You want to move around, you want to do things, and you have that sort of drive and focus. And I picked up this magazine synchronistically. In the magazine, as I opened the page, there was an offer of training as a psychodynamic psychotherapist, a Jungian psychodynamic psychotherapist. And I thought, that's it. That's what I want to do. And so that was in 2008. So finished training 2010. And it wasn't until 2016 when a retired ballet dancer came to see me, having this discharge from a psychiatric unit, that I realized that dancers need dancers who are therapists to understand them, understand their mindset, understand what they go through from such an early age that creates issues either in vocational school or as adults or even as retired dancers. I do have an old, and I'll call her a ballerina, because I know nowadays anyone, a 3-year-old can be a ballerina. In my day, a
Mhm.
ballerina was a principal of the company or a guest artist, a freelance guest artist. They were
Mhm.
ballerinas. All the others were ballet dancers. Um, and she's having difficulty still. She's in her 70s, and she's
Mhm.
still having difficulty of what went through her life as a professional dancer. And so there we are. I hope I crammed that into a minute or so.
Yeah, I think that's a great overview of sort of your journey to getting here. I find it always so interesting to learn people's stories for ending up where they've ended up, and especially coming from a dance background yourself, being in this space of now working with dancers. And I think something that you said is so true, where having somebody who really understands more of the ins and outs and culture and language and all of the things that come with also being a dancer helps. It removes a massive barrier layer of needing to sit and explain to somebody, well, this is how it works, and all of that kind of thing. So that automatically helps with that extra little step there.
So I must tell you a story about what you've just been talking about, the from a physical therapist point of view. So I was in 1968 when I joined the Royal Ballet. We were on tour in Stratford-on-Avon, good old Shakespeare country,
Hmm.
and um, I was doing the Three Ivans, which is the Russian dance in Act 3 of Swan Lake. No, it was Sleeping Beauty,
Hmm.
and my thighs seized up, and I pulled a hamstring, and the company called in the local physiotherapist because there was no dance science in those days.
Yeah.
And she said to me, "Well, what did you do?" And I said, "I've, the legs seized up and the hamstring." She said, "How did you do it?" Well, I showed her, and she said, "What did you do that for?" I said, "It's my job." So there was totally no understanding, not even from an athletic point of view. Like,
Hmm.
oh yes, I deal with footballers or athletes or something like that. No, nothing like that. So there's no comprehension at all of what the body does for dancers, athletes, etc. Anyway, just a little story for you as you're a PT.
Yeah, I think it's such an important one, and something that I think dancers still too often encounter. I find people maybe tend to be a bit more curious now if they're not familiar, and like wanting to ask questions, and especially in today's day and age of social media and cell phones, people probably have videos of what they do on their phones that they can share with somebody that they're working with, or there are other ways of sharing information that maybe help ease that burden a little bit. But yeah, having somebody who just already understands it is amazing, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit then about some of the work that you do through your practice counseling for dancers.
Um, but it is the one-to-one therapy. And I must say that um, before lockdown, I was doing therapy online. So
Mhm.
it made no difference whatsoever. So all my therapy sessions are now online because
Wonderful.
half of my clients and patients for therapy were in the States because you have great difficulty there getting um, a therapist, I meant a mental health practitioner
Mhm.
outside of your state. You can't, a practitioner can't practice outside of each state that
Yes.
they're registered in, but I can. Mind you, I had to double my insurance premium because North America, that's including Canada, are so litigious that the, the insurance
Sounds
goes
right.
up. But it's great. It's great. I've just had the Berlin Staatsopera
Mm.
take me on for referrals. So that's from Berlin, Germany.
Mhm.
And as I said, half of my patients are from the US and other parts of the other half, the other parts of the world, and the UK. The
Mhm.
other part that I do is mental health self care workshops. So that is a proactive approach to dealing with mental health issues. In other words, if you follow my suggestions and techniques, etc., you will have a greater understanding of how the mind works, how the brain works, two separate things, and how you can overcome any situation.
Mhm.
We're always going to get negative situations in our life. It's how we perceive them and how we deal with them, rather than the trigger creating panic, anxiety, whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
even to the extent of a sort of a collapsing before a performance. There is no need for it, because the mind rules the body. The mind creates our reality. What we think creates our reality. So when someone says, no, I can't go on, I can't do that, well, you're telling yourself you can't do it, rather than saying, okay, there must be a way around this that I can do. And there's breathing techniques, there's visualizations, there's so many different tools that can be
Mhm.
used. And even, I don't know whether you use these things, the visualizations for injuries, for healing
Mm.
injuries
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
reducing pain. So
Yes.
I've incorporated everything into these workshops, and getting people who, I ask, when I get onto injuries, because injuries, unless they're an accident, and even accidents can be caused by tiredness, but injuries are usually caused by tiredness. And so this is either the vocational school or the company not giving proper breaks. And so
Mhm.
there are methods of a 2-minute breathing visualization just to cut you off, cut the brain off from what's going on, and then you carry on. Whether companies say, "Oh no, we need 2 minutes. We've got to practice it again," and that awful expression, "One more time, please." It's never one more time, is it? You do
Mhm.
it a dozen
Exactly.
times, a dozen times. Of course, the more you push yourself, the more tired you get, and the more likely you're going to have injuries. The more
Mhm.
likely your dance career is going to shorten by years
Mhm.
because of these injuries. It may just curtail it straight away because the injuries are so bad. So let me ask you now. You said this is a conversation. Let me ask you
Yes.
now. There's always going to be injuries of some sort. So I'm not going to put you out. I get you to talk about putting you out of work, because you always need people like you.
Yeah.
But do you think what I've just said is a way of extending a dancer's dance life career?
Absolutely. I mean, from so many different perspectives. I mean, I think even just from sort of the burnout type of concept, or just feeling like, I can't do this anymore because of some sort of blocks and things that are there. And then just from also, like you were saying, kind of from that safety perspective of, if we're distracted by something else, if we're stressed by something else, if we're just not sort of functioning as a well-oiled machine, then that's when we're probably going to be at a higher risk of injuring ourselves.
Oh,
And I know, even for myself, I still dance, I still compete, I do swing dancing.
oh,
And there are
wonderful! Love
times
that.
it's so much fun, oh my gosh. And there are times where, I'm planning to go take a class, or I'm planning to compete or something like that, and I just have recognized for myself, I'm feeling fatigued, or I'm feeling really distracted or stressed. And there's a difference of when my body feels like, yes, still continuing on seems like a good idea, and then other times where it's like, I feel like I'm going to hurt myself if I go to this class tonight, or something like that. And so, I mean, I have noticed that for myself, absolutely.
Well, our bodies and our minds are talking to us all the time. If we get a twinge, that's our body saying, "Oh, hang on, yeah, don't do that again." No, I said don't do. Oh no, you've done it, and now you've pulled a whatever.
Mhm.
And the mind, and we're always asking ourselves, consciously or unconsciously, which way shall I go? What shall I do next? Should I take this audition? Shall I do this audition or that audition? Or if I got do both auditions, then which job shall I take? And we're being told the answer comes immediately. You need to do this. Or, well, if I take that job, it's not. I'm not going to earn as much as with that job. No, but this is the job you need to take because this is going to progress you even further. No, but I want that job because I'm getting paid $5 or whatever more. And so we go for that, but we ask the question, but we never listen to the answers. And the body does exactly the same, gives you the answers straight away. You don't even have to ask. The body tells you straight away, don't do this again. It's a signal. And
Yes.
we ignore ourselves. So we just think consciously, we know best. Well, no, you don't. And this is why things like meditation, I advocate a 5-minute meditation before morning class. Or if you're a vocational, if you're not a vocational, if you're even a hobby dancer, do it before class because that will prepare you for class. For the vocational and the professionals, that will prepare you for the rest of the day. You can use a 2-minute breathing meditation, as I mentioned earlier, as a break, as a preparation before you go on stage, as a preparation before an audition, an exam, a competition. There we are. There's one for you, Alyssa, to do that because it clears the mind. And while you're counting your breath, you're distracting yourself from the 1,001 thoughts that go on in your head, especially if you've been diagnosed with ADHD. And this is another thing that I talk about, neurodiversity. So in the workshops, because I've found there's a higher percentage in the general population that's in the dance world that is on the neurodiverse spectrum. Doesn't mean that they've reached the diagnosable criteria for it, because everyone in the world is on the neurodiverse spectrum to a certain degree. We all have our little quirks. But if you've noticed my rapid speech, my waving my arms around, my focus, and my drive and my passion, these are all neurodiverse traits. So everyone has these. So when you look, especially at ballet training, ballroom and Latin as well, synchronized swimmers, artistic gymnasts, those sort of things. There's a right way and a wrong way of doing anything. So it's very black and white thinking, and you're being corrected all the time. And this exacerbates neurodiverse traits. So you may have gone into starting hobby dancing at an early age, but the training of it then starts focusing the mind and then creating that black and white thinking, which of course is the autism side. ADHD has other things, but you know, these traits are your magic and your power. It's only when you push them too far do they become detrimental. I've got a scriptwriter patient, wonderful guy. He's an actor as well. He comes up with an idea at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and he must write the treatment and the first episode. So he goes on until about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But that focus and that drive is there, and that's his magic. And anyone else does very similar things. A choreographer that comes up that spends hours listening to the music and doing that, to the detriment of lack of sleep. And then what happens the following day? So they are good, but you have to have an understanding of what you do that creates the detrimental side of things. I've just digressed off at an incredible tangent. I apologize for that. But
no, but I think that's a fantastic tangent.
And this is an ADHD trait.
I think that's a fantastic tangent. And I think, you know, something that I've heard at a couple of different conferences and things now, and I've seen in some different research, this idea of neurodiversity within dance. And also, you know, we know that there's a really high incidence of things like Ehlers-Danlos and hypermobility disorders. And those folks are more likely to have, you know, be more on the spectrum for neurodiversity and different things like that. So there's more and more that we're learning from different perspectives where we're kind of going, maybe there's more of us that are, you know, somewhere on this spectrum than we appreciated before.
Yeah, because, you know, I didn't know whether I was nearly on the spectrum at age 6, but I knew as soon as I got in that class, I really enjoyed it. And then we did our first show at the local little dancing school when I was 6 years old. at Richmond Theatre in Surrey, or Southwest London, they call it now. And I knew then this is what I want to do. So there was that drive and that focus, even at that early age. Let's go back to what you said about Ehlers-Danlos, hypermobility. Someone with that, even if it's not been diagnosed, you just call it hypermobile, is more susceptible to anxiety than anyone that hasn't got hypermobility to that extent. The reason being is they can't control their body. We as humans want to control our environment, whether it's an emotional environment or physical environment. And anxiety is to do with fight and flight. So they're in a continuing fight and flight, trying to control their body and very wary of their surroundings and what's going on. So there's also, when you look at neurodiverse spectrum, you look at the 5 main ones are dyspraxia. So there's your possibility of Ehlers-Danlos there: dyspraxia, dyslexia, dyscalculia, which is the same as dyslexia but with numbers, ADHD, and autism. So autism is now called autism spectrum disorder. So there's no high functioning saying that, and there's no other names. It's just that now for those. And really, unless it goes up to an extreme, that's when it's a disorder. It shouldn't be called a disorder, because you just need to have the ability to understand what's going on for you, to be able to control the situation rather than letting it go itself. I mean, our mind and our brain are wonderful things. So the brain is the mechanism, it's the hard drive. Our mind and our thoughts create the software for it. So we can control that. Neurodiversity, neuroplasticity has come in the last 20 odd years to prove that you can change. These are wired in habits, and you can set new neural pathways, and the synapses will start connecting, and you create a new habit as long as you do it every day. And if you think about, was it 10,000 hours or something for you to create that? So you do the same thing for 30 days. There's your new habit. The old habit is still wired in there, unfortunately. And an analogy I use is, if you think of you call them railroad, don't you? You don't call it a railway. Railroad tracks. And you're in your train, and that's the old habit. You change trains onto the line next to it. That's your new habit. The railway lines are still there, the old ones, but you can look out of your new habit onto the old rail tracks, and they're going rusty, and there's grass growing up, and all of the weeds are growing up, but they're still there. So if you have a bad time, or a trauma happens, a traumatic event happens, you could actually lapse back, change the points on the railway, and you're back on the old habits again. So it's your personal strength and resilience to be able to stay on the new habit.
Well, and I think, it also makes me think of something that you mentioned earlier in the conversation of being able to learn some of the different tools and techniques and, meditative exercises and things like that you can go back to and integrate, as whether it's, part of your daily routine, that habit that you're building, something that you go to when you feel like you need it. I know there are a couple little techniques that I've taught some of the dancers that I work with when they get really nervous before a competition. That's supposed to help with kind of just feeling a bit more grounded, and then they feel less nervous going out. And things that, as you get better at them, you also, and get more practice, you often can just be quicker with it. So then it's this quick little thing that you can just pull out when you're feeling like you need a little something to help you. But getting that practice in the first place, and getting that routine down of going, maybe I should use one of these tools that I've learned, is half the battle.
It is. And as I said, our mind and our thoughts create our reality. So if you say that you're no good and you're not going to win this competition, or you're not going to do well, you won't. And if you have made a mistake or an error in rehearsal or in practice, and it stays in your mind, it'll happen on stage or in the performance area or whatever you're doing.
Mhm.
And to be able to wipe that out is to visualize yourself doing it as well as you possibly can. Never use the word perfect.
Mhm.
You do it as well as you possibly can, and you're visualizing it, and you're doing it yourself. You're not watching yourself in your imagination. Do you understand what I mean?
Mhm.
Yep. You need to add a third element. So you've got the physical element, you've got the mind element, but you need to add a feeling to it. That
Mm.
feeling of, wow, I've really done this well. And if you can generate what I get people to do is, what's the best thing that's happened to you and what feeling did you have? Okay, so they go into that and they create this feeling. And I say, isn't it incredible how your mind is, how powerful your mind is? It's created a feeling. And
Yes.
so they say, yeah, okay. So I say, hold on to that feeling. Now do the visualization that I've set you. And so they do the visualization, they add that to it. And there you have the complete package. I can't remember, it was the 80s or the 90s, research was done on American athletes. And they wired their brain, they wired their muscles. You know this research that was done?
I think maybe.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it proved that the mind sends signals to the brain when you're visualizing what you're doing. So, for instance, if it was 100 meters, they did the 100 meters of themselves, imagining themselves doing it with their eyes closed, and the signals were going from the brain into the muscles. And so it proved that the muscles were working
Mhm.
and doing the 100 meters. What they didn't add to it was my little idea of adding the feeling to it. But at least it proved that the mind and the body work. And the
Yes.
brain and the body work. The mind is the imagination. The brain is the mechanism, and it's wired into the muscles. So by
Mhm.
creating this illusion, the brain doesn't know what's right or wrong, what's real or imaginary. It's just told what to do, and it does it.
Mhm.
So when you start saying to yourself, I'm rubbish, the brain says, oh, okay, then, oh, you're rubbish. And that's what
Mhm.
it's stuck with. So you spend years in training being corrected all the time, and you're thinking, I'm being corrected all the time. So some people will think, I'm being corrected, oh, that's great, I can improve. Others will then get low self-esteem because they're being corrected all the time and they're just taking it the wrong way. and
Mhm.
the, and in therapy you have to work through all those years to get rid of all of that, to start with a clean slate. And actually, I'm okay, I'm safe. So the um we were talking just a moment ago about creating our reality by the way that we think, and affirmations are brilliant at that. I am. Start with I am. The brain goes, oh, that's me. Oh, well, what have I got to do? I am safe. Oh, okay, you're safe. No, we're safe. We're safe. And so it creates this dialogue, and this internal dialogue that is positive, rather than I'm rubbish, I can't do this, I'm no good, I'm never going to get the exam, I won't do anything, da di da di da di da.
Mhm.
And the brain says, okay, well, you won't then. And you're going to make a mistake because you already thought about the mistake before you went on stage or the competition or the audition.
Mhm.
That stopped you in your
No, I think that that is such an important thing with just sort of how we're framing our thoughts about what we're doing and how we're preparing for things and that sort of stuff. I mean, I know there have been times where, even when I go into competition myself, where it's sort of like, well, to set the stage a little bit more, a lot of times when I'm competing, I'm also working the event. I set up a table and I'm working on clients during the time. And so I'm kind of going back and forth between I'm in work mode, now I'm going to go compete. And sometimes the schedule gets a little crazy. And so then I'm like running out there because they're saying, you need to be out here. They're lining people up and trying to make that flip of, wait, now I'm competing now. And sometimes getting out there and going, oh my gosh, I've been so busy, I'm tired, I don't think this is going to go well, or, that kind of thinking versus I'm leaving that behind. I'm doing something different right now. This is
Mm.
my time to enjoy the dance and time to um, enjoy this process of the competition. And I find that if I can sort of reset that framework for myself before I actually go out, I just feel better doing it in the first place. And it usually goes better as well.
Mm. Yes, of course. And you've proved the point, haven't you, by what you just said, that it works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want to go to something that you've mentioned and kind of take us down a little bit different path here now. Talking about how, as dancers, we're used to receiving a lot of feedback, getting corrections on things. Let's talk a little bit about sort of our training, the words that are used in training from instructors or artistic directors or things like that, and maybe some of the habits that we see when it comes to that training perspective. So, what are some maybe trends or common issues that you see come up from that perspective from training?
Well, we've got the old school who say it as it is,
Mhm.
and quite abusively sometimes. There are still some of those around. There are newer artistic directors coming through that has still got the bits of the old school, because the thought is, well, I was trained that way, or I've worked, my artistic directors work, and I'm okay. And I'm thinking, are you okay? And then, of
Mhm.
course, you've got the other new ones coming up, which um, are saying, I would never treat my company or if you're a teacher, my students in that way. That was really abusive. So it's polarized. Um, it's going to take a generation, I think,
Yeah.
to be able to clear of that old way of saying as it is. And it's still the body image of um, the nymph ballerina,
Mhm.
and the shape. I think there's is that a website or a movement? Any body can dance, which I think is a
Yes.
wonderful saying. Um, and when you look, actually, the comparison is black dancers can't be in Swan Lake. But of course they can.
Mhm.
So girls who aren't anorexic looking can still dance in Swan Lake in
Mhm.
tights, regardless of colour as well.
Mhm.
I'm working with the Acosta Foundation. Of course, they're Cuban based. No,
Mm.
beautiful dancers, absolutely beautiful dancers. And it doesn't matter. They they are more muscular. You, who's the black ballerina, the American black ballerina? She was very muscular.
Misty Copeland?
Yep. Okay.
Mhm.
And I could sort of sense these old school artistic directors going, ooh, oh dear, ooh, not quite the shape
Mhm.
that they should be. Or that was an English accent rather than an American accent. Um, so, but she pulled through. She
Mhm.
got through and did it, and was the first one. Uh, why? Why can't artistic directors see technique and talent rather than shape?
Yes.
So they're using phrases like, "You need to lengthen your legs a bit more." Well, actually, the bone's not going to move. It's
Right.
still there. What do you mean? Mm. I've got a 20-year-old non-British dancer, and I've been seeing her for about no 3 years. I saw her when she was at her vocational school. She's a late developer physically, and she was freaking out that she said, my chest is enlarging, because she has body dysmorphia as well as anorexia,
Mhm.
and her body, she's growing to be a woman, but it freaked her out about it. And so session
Mhm.
after session she would just freak out. She hates mirrors. And we were talking about comparing. That's probably another interview. But the thing was, she was really freaking out that 17, 18, she was getting a bust. She called it a chest. Perhaps she didn't even want to say the word. And then she was posting, because see, the thing is, it's difficult to have an Instagram account or a Facebook account for business, and then see your clients and your patients in there, because they're posting. She's posting it, wonderful figure, but because of body dysmorphia, she can't see that. And it's been exacerbated by the comments that are made, and or perceived. So you've got a history of what the female dancer should look like. So that's the history. So in the head, the dancers now think that's what they should look like, even though the teacher is not mentioning it at all, but they think they need to do that. They think they need to be like that. And that is what's carrying on. So the history is still carrying on, even though no one's saying about it, except the few artistic directors or vocational artistic directors in the schools, the principals, and some teachers. Because you think about our training when we started at an early age. How old were you, Alyssa?
I was 3 when I started.
Okay, you started at 3. So you think of what you were told about ballet or about dance, whatever form of dance you did, and you think what was said to you about, if you want to do this as a career, it's going to be tough. It's a tough career, so you've got to be tough now. You mustn't show weakness at all. And so that in our heads as kids was, if you have an injury, you just work through that injury, because otherwise you show a weakness. No one wants to see weakness. If grandma died, you don't talk about that, because you might be showing a sign of weakness. And I did hear a teacher say, when I was younger, I don't want to hear anything about your emotion or your physical thing. You leave that outside the studio door. All I want to see you in the studio is dance. And that creates this impression in a child's head. So we train in fear. We perform in fear. And when we transition out of the profession, we're still in fear of anything else in the world.
Yes.
And we, as dancers that have gone through that rigorous training, we have so many transferable skills. And it's not realized by the dancer themselves. I've had retired dancers come in, they've gone into sales jobs and things like that, and they come back for they've got anxiety, but actually they haven't dealt with the grief of transitioning and loss of an identity of dancer, etc. But they say, I just started this job, and the boss, my manager, just can't imagine how hard I work and how quickly I pick things up. I say, well, that's your dance training.
Yeah. And
so dancers don't realize how proficient they are at so many things, not just dance. They've got spatial awareness.
Yes.
They're doing an office job. They can move around an office and not bump into people, and see what's going on around them. It's great. I just go on forever.
No, I mean, you're right on target with so much of that, where it's, I mean, we build so many transferable skills. I often see, I'm also a part-time faculty in a physical therapy program. And some of the students who come in and who had dance background, like, more extensive dance background, not someone who just took classes for a couple of years or something like that. When they come in, learning the mechanics of what it is that we do, understanding how the body moves and functions, they get it faster, it seems like, than some of the other students do. They're very aware of their body mechanics and how to move through things. So if I'm demonstrating something, they tend to pick up on it a bit quicker. So, even in that setting, I see that difference. And I know for myself, there's things where, when I try a new skill, when I go someplace new, whatever, I feel like there's so much that I pull from that dance experience. And some of those different skills that we build that, I mean, yeah, there's so much that we have to offer. And we also learned some things that maybe weren't so great, and more perfectionism and more, like you said, sort of like fear of failure, fear of, what if I get injured and there's somebody who's there to replace me, or maybe I
Well,
won't be asked
sorry,
back to the
sorry to
company.
interrupt. That's what we're told as
Hmm.
well,
Exactly.
either directly or by implication.
Yes.
Say, look around. How many girls in the chorus are there? We've got you to do that, the signet. I'm talking about Swan Lake again. But how many girls of the same height as you are there? You better be on.
Hmm.
Limp on
Hmm.
stage, a limping signet.
Yes. And
Sorry.
there's so many of these things where it's like, whether it's something like that, whether it's an injury or words about what somebody's body looks like, or, all of these different things, whether it's actually said to the dancer themselves or they're hearing it being said to somebody else that's
Oh,
around
yeah.
them,
Yeah.
it's going to make an impact on them.
Mm. So this patient, the one that I was mentioning about anorexia and body dysmorphia, has never had anyone say anything about her body directly to her. She has picked it up by listening to this a nasty teacher in her teens talking to other girls in the
Hmm.
class. And so the fear is built in. If I don't do this, she's going to be shouting at me.
Yep.
So it's just picked up like that and implied, nothing direct. So the fear is built in there.
Yes. Well, and even in the swing dancing community, so I do a specific style called West Coast swing,
Oh
and
yes.
it's so much fun. But there's discussions that come up frequently on Facebook. There's a Facebook group where people will post questions and things, and one that frequently comes up is, well, how am I going to progress in my dance as a bigger bodied dancer? Because it seems like always the people who are thinner frame, thinner build are the ones who progress. And, I've been doing this dance style specifically for 15 years now. I have never once heard an instructor or a judge say something about, well, if you're a bigger body, you're getting scored down. Or if you're a smaller body, I'm going to look at you more and progress you along in the competition. I have never, ever heard those words. But the frequency that question comes up in that discussion board and the amount of comments that always are said on that is incredible,
Mm. And
because
what
there's such a
interesting?
perception there.
Yes. And what's interesting from my point of view as a psychotherapist, now looking at judging, is it's very subjective.
Hmm.
So as a psychodynamic psychotherapist, I work with the patient's unconscious. So I can sense something that's going on um, for the person. So when you're looking at judges and their subjective view of each individual competitor, they have built up in their unconscious all those years of liking and disliking people. So if they're viewing somebody, if they're looking at a competitor who resembles either facially, physically, or they're wearing a colored costume that they hated when they were a kid, something like that, there's an unconscious bias against that individual. Or on the other hand, there's still a positive unconscious bias for someone. They could have identical technique. They could
Hmm.
be as good as each other, but because of the unconscious bias there is that's that's programmed into their head from their past, that's the same as a trigger
Hmm.
that we use in, when people say, I'm triggered by this, but it's the same as that.
Yeah.
Um, so when you're looking at trauma, the the traumatic event has happened in the past. I know I'm digressing here from the other bit, but a traumatic event has happened in the past, but it's triggering a trauma in the present. Because you're going into fight and flight mode again. And so that's what creates that. It's an unconscious memory of something that's happened in the past. And where was I going with this? So when you're looking at feelings that arise, the thought has already created the feelings, because what has been seen, smelt, felt, heard is the trigger. And so you've heard that with your senses, and then the unconscious thought is, oh, that's very much like this. And the feeling then goes into your body. And then you think, oh, I'm going to have a panic attack, but you don't know why. And at that moment, if you just do the breathing exercise, I'm really digressing here. If you do the breathing exercise, or you do your thought control techniques, in 3 minutes, that panic attack will go. Without moving, without doing anything, you're just telling your body you're safe. You're telling your mind you're safe. The brain says, oh, we're safe. Okay, let's take away the feelings of that you were getting. And from that, you will then calm down. So if at the beginning of my workshops, I give a trigger warning. I said, we may be talking about stuff. If anything happens to you, just sit there quiet. Don't run out the room. She's just running away from whatever the monster, the hairy monster that's chasing you in your dreams. When I work with dreams as well, by the way, in my therapy sessions. So you're running away from that monster. There's not actually a monster. You just sit there quietly. And if you need someone, a friend with you, then you can sit there with them. And I explain about the breathing, I explain about the thinking, and it goes. It's easier that. There is a derogatory expression saying it's all in your mind. But unfortunately, it is right. It is all in your mind, because nothing is going to happen to you at that moment. Now, if there is a real traumatic event, a car crash, or your bag is snatched, or something like that, then your fight and flight it works, and it's great.
Yes.
But fight and flight in any normal situation is just created by your thought. And it's just convincing yourself that you are safe, and actually nothing is going to happen. And then use those techniques of thought and breathing, and in 3 minutes, it'll go away. There are other ones like splashing ice cold water on your face, a breathing technique where you breathe in really heavily in 3/4 of a breath, and you go like that, and that resets the sympathetic nervous system.
It's amazing how we can trick our bodies with some of that and trick our minds. One that I've used, because I'm definitely a person who's dealt with anxiety and panic attacks and all those things. I always carry either really strong mints or like sour candies or something like that, so that if I'm having a moment, it's that thing that just distracts me and makes me kind of refocus, retune in. And that's something that's really easy just to carry in a purse, carry in a backpack, keep in my dance bag. So that's my little sort of jolt back to reality and going, wait, is this real? Is this something that I really need to worry about right now? Or is this just something that's kind of popping into my brain for some reason?
Your dance bag reminded me of something, because we were talking about the way we speak to ourselves in our head, or even out loud sometimes. The negative words, but words really do count and matter. And the dance bag example is what I use, because the brain doesn't recognize negative words. So don't forget your dance bag. Okay, where's the negative word in that sentence?
Right at the beginning.
Yeah. And if you take that out because the brain hasn't recognized it, what is that sentence?
Forget your dance bag.
Correct. What's a better way of saying it?
Remember your dance bag.
Yes. Okay. So even simple things like that will allow you to have a happier life and an easier life by removing those negative words. As I explained earlier, the brain doesn't recognize right from wrong, imaginary from real. So you're tricking your brain. This is what you said. We're tricking our brain into a positive view.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
That killed the conversation, didn't it?
I think I want to take the opportunity to kind of once again shift our train of thought and of discussion here a little bit. So we've talked a bit about what you do within your practice, some of the trends that we see with training, this discussion of words matter. I also want to talk a bit about your charity or nonprofit organization, Steps. For folks who aren't familiar with that, share a bit about what that is.
Okay, so let's get back to my own website, counsellingfordancers.com. That generated information, but I was just one person. And since COVID, so the 2 years over the COVID period, I was doing 1,000 sessions a year. And it was getting a strain. Most of those were either reduced or free pro bono sessions because, dancers didn't have work.
Yeah.
Parents couldn't afford it for their dancing son or dancing daughter. So I came on the idea of, and I built an app called Help for Dancers. That is no longer in existence. I've transferred all the content into a course, which I'll be launching under the Help for #4 Dancers brand. But I also thought I need to set up a charity and bring other people in. I have now got 4 retired dancers who are qualified counsellors. Some of those will also be learning my content on my in my workshops, so that they'll be able to be doing that. So then Steps 2 years ago came into existence, and it wasn't until May of this year that we got charitable status. I think it's different. I mean, we can call ourselves a charity because we have from the Charity Commission in the UK, a government organisation, and you call them non-profits, I think, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we are charitable status in May, and in August this year we launched our social media launch, and we'll be launching a bigger fundraising. I mean, the Fund Me button is there to donate on the website. That's the Steps dot charity. That's the name of the website, and Steps has got 2 P's to it, so it stands for support, training, education, performance, psychotherapy, solutions. My lovely wife came up with that as we were sitting around the table thinking, what should we call it, and she came up with that. Brilliant. And so Steps is going to help support the mental health of the dance world. It's starting off in the dance world in the UK. We'll see how that goes. In the US, you've got mental health first aid. That's right, mental health first aiders and the mental health first aid organisation. We've got the same in the UK, except it's split into our countries. So England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland have got separate ones. That the English one is far more robust, and we're negotiating with them some new ideas, webinars for mental health first aiders who deal with performing artists. And we'll be offering greatly reduced mental health first aid training, because Steps' aim is to get at least one mental health first aider in every dancing school. And I'm talking the local dancing school, not the big studios or anything like that. This is what we aim to get, which is why we have to negotiate lower costs to be able to do that, to get the quantity in for them. We'll still be doing the workshops, as I mentioned, but I'm going to get other people to start coming in and doing the same workshops as I've been doing. And therapy sessions. So we're looking at sliding scale and free sessions. we are needing a lot of donations. So we'll be going to trusts and foundations and private companies or bigger conglomerates to try and get some funding. There's a bad word as well. I shouldn't have used that. Try. Try implies failure.
Mm.
Come on, do that exercise. Let's try that again. Sorry. So that was, yeah, you see, even I can do that. So we're going to be going to get some fundraising up and running. We need a fundraiser to be able to do that. It's all a slow process, but you know, it's all there. It's all there and ready. And I think next year we are going to put together a dance gala, so all genres. So my ambassadors, patrons, and trustees are from all different genres of dance: jazz, tap, two contemporaries, one from Royal Ballet, one from English National Ballet, soloists. They are. Yeah, and it goes, the list goes. Oh, classical Indian dancer as well. Oh, and two wheelchair dancers and a ballroom dancer. Yes, it's all coming together now. So we can put on this magnificent gala with all these different genres. And one of the patrons is a choreographer, so he'll be doing something with his musical theatre students as well. So there's going to be all these different things, and of course, with all of their followers, that's what we're trying to get, followers for steps as well. So my work abroad is all going to be through counsellingfordancers.com. Then the work in the UK is going to be with steps.charity. That's the name of the website.
Well, fantastic. That sounds like a really great undertaking and project and way to reach out to the community, because I mean, we all know who are involved in the dance medicine space. There is so much need for assistance, whether it's mental health, physical health, who knows, lots of different topics that we could throw in there, but ways to just get more access to folks and bring around the awareness that there are folks like us who specialize in working with dancers and performers who get it. We're going full circle here, all the way back to the very beginning of our conversation. People who get it and can help them through whatever it is that they're needing assistance with along the way and support with.
May I just give the social media tags, please?
Yes, please.
So Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn for Steps is Steps CIO. That's Steps again with the double P. Steps CIO. That's the tag for that. For Counselling for Dancers, it's Counselling for Dancers _official for the Instagram account, and for the Facebook account, it's just Counselling for Dancers. Unfortunately, my Instagram account last year's July, it was in the summer, I was hacked. I had 6,500 followers, lost them all, and I think I've got about 600 now. So I've got about 6,000 to pick up on. So please follow all of us, both accounts. Not the Counselling for Dancers. Counselling for Dancers _official. Yes, I don't want that hacker benefiting.
Yes. Exactly. Yes, and I will make sure that when things get posted, we'll have links to all of the different correct accounts and all of that sort of thing as well. So people will be able to find you that much more easily. I think this is a good opportunity for a special segment on the show. And every episode of Dance Med Spotlight, we have the final bow. So this is take-home messages from our episode. We've talked about a lot of different topics, some different perspectives as well. If someone from the audience were to walk away with one thing, what do you hope that they walk away with? Or maybe a couple if you want.
Okay, a couple. I am safe. I am okay. That's one.
Mm,
And the other one is, when you have a day off, have a day off. Do not do anything else. Rest your body, rest your mind. Don't go off to the gym. Don't even
mhm.
go for a run. You go for a walk. Just rest.
I love that. So important. Well, Terry, thank you so much for your time today. This was a fantastic conversation. And I feel like we could probably have, 10 more episodes about 10 other topics, diving more deeply into each of them.
Oh,
But this was a great initial conversation, at least. So thank you for your time.
no, it's my pleasure, Alyssa. Thank you for asking me.
Dance Med Spotlight is hosted and produced by Alyssa Arms. We discuss all things dance medicine. This has been another episode from Dance Med Spotlight. The Dance Med Spotlight is intended for educational purposes only. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present.